Hello my friends, welcome back to another tutorial. This week I'm going to be painting something for a supporter out there. Deborah, who is a great supporter of mine, is stuck on a particular scene she wants to paint. It's a photograph she took herself, I think if I'm correct, and she wants me to add a speedboat into the scene. So it's a picture of a lake with some trees, lots of water. She wants me to see if I can add a speedboat into the scene for her. So yeah, I'm going to try it this week, see if we can help Deborah out, because she's having particularly a lot of trouble trying to get the painting just right. So I thought we'd try it and see what you think. If you do have any requests, if you're stuck on any particular aspect of painting, just let me know. Just leave a comment in the comment box below, and I'll see if I can get to you and try and help you out with a particular subject. All right, let's crack on and have a bit of fun with this. I'm using a 16 by 12 canvas. I primed this once with some normal water-based white undercoat. That's all. Thinned out with plenty of water. One quick coat, let it dry. A quick rub with very fine sandpaper just to smoothen the surface, and it's lovely and smooth. It really is. It feels like a really expensive canvas. It's that kind of a feeling. So you can use cheap canvases and just prime them yourself. It's very cost effective if you're kind of stuck, you know, for buying expensive canvases. That's a good way out of it. So let's crack on and have a bit of fun with this. Sky, trees, water, and then we'll add a boat. Okay, don't go anywhere. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Okay, there is the photograph. It's a lovely photograph, beautiful colour, and I added in a boat with just a photo app that I have on my phone. So I took the boat from a different photograph she sent me, and I added it into this just for a reference. So that's the kind of thing she's looking for, Deborah. She wants me to maybe add something to the back of the boat, like some kind of a float being pulled along. So we'll see what we can do. Okay, let's try and help Deborah. See if we can help out Deborah. I'm going to grab a brush. Let me see. Where are my good brushes? So I'm going to take a big brush. Any big brush you have will do fine. So let me just get my big kind of a rough brush now that I normally use. It's here somewhere. I do apologise. Let me see if I can find it. I have this one. I'm just getting my brushes in order here now. I should have done this first. Perhaps that would have been the easiest thing to do, to get organised before I press record. But I think this will do fine. We get away with this one here. Now, I have some thinners in a little jar. Turpentine with some linseed oil as well. Just a drop of linseed oil, that's all I have. So let's start. I'm going to start with, there's my big brush. There's my big brush, I found it. A very light blue sky. Simple, nice and simple, light blue sky. Let's take some phaylo blue, and I'm going to take lots of white. Now plenty of thinners in this. We want a nice thin coat, okay? Not like watercolours, but a very thin creamy coat, just to help this move along nicely. Now let's try this, see what we have. All right, nice light blue, look, yeah, a nice soft blue. Now also, if you're having trouble getting this to cover your canvas, you can run some of your thinners with some tissue paper along your canvas as well. That helps. Now I want to show you what I mean, because my canvas is a tiny little bit on the dry side, as in it's kind of soaking in the paint quite quickly. So I'll dip this in my turps, in my thinners, and just apply a very thin coat of that just around my canvas here. Look, just on the sky. Now let's see what happens. So if we now mix up another little bit of colour, you will see it goes much further. You see that? Now you can tell I'm using a very thin coat of this. You see how thin that is? It's very thin. A lot of people using oil paints, they go right on with a very thick coat of paint. The problem with that is, when you get to putting in clouds and stuff like that, it gets very messy. Because you have so much paint on your canvas, it can get quite messy, very messy. Now let's take a touch of magenta into that. Some more white. And coming down, it's just a slightly pinker colour. Now, you can just use a simple blue sky. The only reason I'm putting magenta into this is simply just to add a touch of colour into the sky. That's all, just to make it a little bit more interesting. You can, if you like, just paint a blue sky with white clouds, but I like sometimes to add a little hint of colour into a blue sky, just like this, because it just adds a little touch of interest. You may not see it on camera, but when the picture is finished and you'll see the thumbnail, you will see that slightly pinky colour coming out in the sky. Now bear in mind we have lots of white clouds in this, so we need to go for like a slightly darker hue, only slightly. Let's try some cadmium red for a change. You want a slightly darker colour just to show your clouds properly. So I'm going to go with a slightly darker blue up on top and soften that down. Look, just a little phaylo blue even. Let's go across and bring it down, just soften it right down. It just gives a nice contrast in the sky. It's always good, I find, now I could be wrong, but I find it's always nice to have a sky slightly darker as it goes higher. That just helps with perspective, alright? That's all it is. It's just perspective. Now I'm going to just dampen my brush and clean it on some tissue just to get the bulk of that blue out of my brush, okay? Take some white, neat white paint on its own. Look, plenty of white. Go down here and let's just start lightening a little bit down here. Just as it goes off in the distance, I want to just lighten it very lightly. And that's good. My next job is to get some clouds in on this. I'm going to take a slightly smaller brush. Let me see now if I can find the brushes I need, because, you know, sometimes I'm very unorganised with brushes. Most people would have the brushes they need ready at hand, but I'm just so lazy. I tend to just leave everything and come back and then I'm looking for brushes. A little flat brush. I'm going to take some white on this, a dry brush, some white. So now we have a thin layer already. Now we can go on with some thicker colours. Just white. Even, look, we could maybe even add a touch of magenta. We could make it a very whitey pink if we want. Okay, and simply, let's just go in with some clouds. Now the trick with clouds, I find, is to make them very random. A lot of people, when they're painting clouds, especially beginners, as I did when I was beginning, when I was starting, they tend to be very kind of clinical and very exact with their clouds. I've learned over the years to be very random with your clouds. Just make them look puffy. You see what I mean? Very, very random. Because clouds, by nature, are random, aren't they? So, you see, just go down, give it a wiggle, up and down, all different directions. That gives you very natural clouds, I find. And because we have that little bit of blue on there, the blue is mixing and giving us almost natural shadows on the clouds as well. Now I'm cleaning my brush as well. I'm just keeping my brush clean in between because it can get quite kind of messy. The next thing I'm going to do is take some white and let's create some swirls or something like that up in the sky. Let's just go like this, look. Coming down at that kind of an angle and straightening out as they come down, you see? You see how quickly I did that just with a couple of little flicks of the brush. Now you can, if you like, use a palette knife as well for this. A palette knife will give you a lovely effect as well. Now, you will think this looks very messy, right? But I'm going to show you how this all works in just a moment. I'm just popping a lot of white around here and there. What I do then is I take my soft blender brush, notably a makeup brush, and I simply drag all those down, look. Soften them all away. And follow the direction of your clouds coming down. That pulls the cloud in at a certain direction. Now with these, I just soften them very gently. They are so far away, you won't see much detail on these. It's just a nice impression of a sky, that's all you want. That's all I want to get. That's looking pretty good so far, isn't it? I think one more thing I want to do is just take some neat white paint with my palette knife and just go on and give these a good hit of white, just a real good thick white here and there, just to really make them stand out a little bit more, that's all. You don't have to do this. Now it's perfectly fine with the brush as it is. You can leave it as it is if you like, but I just find sometimes with a knife like this, scraping it around the place like that, just having a bit of fun, it just creates a wonderful little texture in the sky. Now, I go over that now with my soft brush again, very gently, just to soften some of those away. You can leave little marks of paint if you like, quite nice, but let's just soften it very slightly. And I think I'm kind of fairly happy with that. Now, if you want to go a step further with this, you can. If you would like to put some shadows in on clouds, I'm going to show you. This is how I paint shadows on clouds. Take some white or some blue, some phthalo blue. We'll take some magenta. Not too much of that now, just we're going for a nice mauve first. Then we're going to add a touch of black. So we get a kind of a blacky purple sort of a colour. Maybe a hint more blue actually. So a very dark purpley kind of a blacky colour. And let's just put some of that in here and there, look. I'm going at the bottom side of the cloud. Just like that, just straight across. Here and there, you see? Very random again, very random. As you get down to the horizon line, everything goes very kind of straight across, very horizontal, you see that? That just helps with perspective, I find. So I'll put that brush down, again go back to my soft blender brush, and I'm just going to soften these. Because I know a lot of you would probably ask how do you create these shadows on the clouds. This is it, just pop a little dark colour in and soften it all together with a blender brush. It just adds a little bit of something to the sky. You see what I mean? A couple of little shadows here and there. That's it. I think we're done with that. The next thing I'm going to do is add a little hill off in the distance. Now, Deborah, I am going to simplify this, okay? I'm not going to go into huge amounts of detail with this. I want to simplify this for everyone. So I'm taking some phthalo blue, little burnt umber, and a touch of white. I'm going for a very soft kind of a greeny blue for the hills in the distance, and keep adding little touches of colour as you need. Just adjusting it all the time. And I'm looking very briefly at the reference photograph as well. Very briefly. You know, Deborah, can take your time. You can take your time when you're doing this to get this exactly right. But I'm just kind of doing it very loosely, just to show you colour mixing and that kind of thing. We also have a little bit of a hill coming up here, don't we? Some burnt umber, phthalo blue. And we could take perhaps a hint of magenta as well. So we get a little hill coming up here. It disappears in behind the trees, doesn't it? So what I do when I'm doing, when I'm painting something like this, I'm just simplifying it. Okay, I'm concentrating on one section at a time, because it's very easy to get kind of bogged down with everything around it. I tend to just focus on one section at a time. I think it's much easier. I try my best to kind of block out everything else that's going on in the painting. So a little bit of phthalo blue mixed in with that, just there, soften it in, and try and make a nice colourful painting out of all of this. Then we have some nice little trees going across here. Now what I would do for them is just my flat brush, alright? Take a little phthalo blue, perhaps a little black, and a touch of cadmium yellow. We want a very dark green for this. What I would do is simply put my brush on edge and go like that, look. And go up and down with this. It needs to be up and down, all right? Try not to make this very uniform, is the word, because it needs to be very random. So a couple of thick ones going up high, then one or two small ones, and keep flattening the tip of your brush, you see? Just flatten it out. So we have just a little row of trees off in the distance, like so. And you can soften them in too to the mountains, look. Soften them back in to the hills, ever so slightly. That also gives a nice little effect, doesn't it? And we have a couple going off here into this hill. I'm using my brush just on the side, that's all. Creating little bits up and down. Now I'll take a little black and a little blue, and I'll go over here, just darken, maybe a little more blue. Let's put plenty of blue in these. And I'd say we're pretty good at this. Just soften that back in here. It's going to disappear behind the trees anyway. So I'll stop at that. And I'll take off my masking tape. So now, you can see we have a nice little row of trees off in the distance. Isn't that just a wonderful invention, masking tape? It's just absolutely wonderful. The next thing I'm going to do is just take some of that dark colour with some thinners. I'm going to mark out my tree line. So it comes along here, and it comes up there then, doesn't it? Just for reference, that's all. And then we can paint all of this lovely water here. So, back to our big brush, and let's put some thinners on this as well. It just helps, doesn't it? When I'm painting a kind of a large area like this, especially on a bigger canvas, this is a great idea. It just helps the paint flow much quicker. I'm going to start with a very rich, vibrant, bright kind of a blue. So, phthalo blue and white. You see how that makes some difference? You see, just it really allows you to cover a lot in a short time. Go right up there. And this is always just going to be a kind of a base coat. I add thicker layers as I'm going. I see a lot of people who are kind of asking me questions. They always seem to put on too much paint at the beginning. And then what happens is it's very difficult to control what colours you want to use afterwards. I get that a lot, you know. What I would say to you is, I know logically you're supposed to put oil paints on very thick. That's the whole principle of oil paints, because they're oily, they're thick. You're supposed to use thick layers. But you don't have to follow exactly the rules. You can just make it your own. Have your own techniques, so to speak. Because once you put paint on a painting, it's very difficult to get the paint back off again. You know, you're kind of trapped. Once it goes on, it's very difficult to kind of thin it out and take it back off of the canvas again. So that's why I always just stay a little bit cautious and use thin layers to begin with. Now I'm just taking some blue, a touch of black and a touch of magenta, just to darken it again from the bottom upwards. So we're doing the opposite from the sky. We're darkening this from the bottom and we're coming up and softening it into the lighter shade, you see? Just make it nice and gradual. What you don't want is a kind of a solid line going across. So make sure you're softening everything in properly. Go at an angle, all that kind of stuff. For now, we have a nice little base colour there. The next thing I'm going to do is just take my flat brush, clean it, make it nice, make sure it's nice and clean, or any flat brush you have, something nice and kind of flat like that. I want to mix a darker colour now and start putting in some of the darks on this. I'll take phthalo blue, magenta, and maybe a touch of black, just a touch. And these are very kind of vibrant, translucent colours now. So let's just start like this, okay? I'm just going to start putting in little flicks with my small flat brush. I'm sort of overlapping. It's pretty much like a crisscross type of effect, you see? That's all. My only goal by doing this is to create a little movement in the water. That's all I'm doing. You can, if you like, use a palette knife as well. By all means, you can use a palette knife and just kind of dab it along. But I like to try and get as much as I can done with a brush before I start adding a palette knife, because once you start putting paint on with a palette knife, it starts becoming very thick again. So I try to do as much as I can with my brush first. Just taking your time. There's no rush. You can stop the video and look and go back and, you know, go back over it again. I'm just used to working in a very quick kind of a manner like this, because I find if I spend too much time concentrating on little bits like this at a time with a small pointy brush, you become absorbed into the painting a little too much and you forget everything else. So my idea is trying to just create a nice little impression of a scene, not photograph. If I want to get a painting to look like a photograph, I'll just take a photograph and hang it on my wall. I've no interest in trying to make something like a photographic copy. I think it's just not fun, really. Not for me anyway. For some people, yes, but I just prefer a nice simple impression like this. You see, we already have some nice movement now, don't we? Let's go a shade darker. Let's take phthalo blue and a bit more black this time. And some magenta again, the magenta, just to warm it and keep the colours slightly warm, okay? Let's get a little bit of that colour and pop a little bit of that through, sort of just as it comes kind of towards you, down at the front, or at the bottom should we say, but it's going to kind of soften away then as it goes off. Again, this is just creating perspective. So as something goes off in the distance, it gets lighter and lighter. I work on that principle. And as it comes closer to you, it gets darker and darker. And that gives you an impression of perspective in a painting. So you see, just dabbing it left and right, left and right. Nothing too difficult, I hope. Let's stop again and take another look. We already have a nice little bit of movement on the water, don't we? I think I'll get my soft brush now and just start from the top and very gently soften these horizontally, alright? Don't be tempted to go like this. Everything on water especially is horizontal, left and right. That's the key, that's the secret when painting reflections and stuff like that. It's always left and right. So I'm just softening them out ever so slightly. That's that done. The next job, you're going to like this. It's time for the palette knife. I use a flat-edged palette knife like this. It gives you nice crisp lines. Something like this is fine as well, but because of the angle on these, it's very difficult to know if you're completely horizontal. So some people might go like this thinking they're going straight across, but in actual fact, there's a slight angle on this, so they're going down. So you need to hold it like this. So that can be slightly confusing for a beginner. I prefer this, because you can see exactly you're going straight across. Let's take a nice bright, luminous blue. Phthalo blue, lots and lots of white. I just want to add a little bit of glitter on this. Just give it a quick mix up. You don't have to be too particular with all this. Just give it a quick mix. Cut into it like that slightly. And I'm just going to go up and just start swinging. I'm swinging my knife from left to right, look. And I'm going down and hitting it off the canvas ever so slightly. Do you understand? I'm just kind of swinging it like an anchor sort of a shape. So I'm swinging it left and right, just catching just catching the canvas a little bit at a time. Now we don't want too much of this, just a little bit of a shimmer. Take a bit more phthalo blue then as it comes down. And up at the top I'm giving it very fine, I'm kind of almost scratching it across the canvas, you see, giving it that bit of a sheen. It's all just to create a little bit of movement in the water, that's it, nothing else. And that's, look, that's fine. And I'll just, again, very gently soften some of that back in. I don't want to lose too much of it, I just want to soften a little bit of it back, you see? There. Now I think that's fine for the project. Just for this project I think it's fine. We don't need to go into a lot of detail about all of this. The next thing we need to do is to start our trees. I'm just going to go and take a simple big brush and mix up a nice rich dark green. Let's go with cadmium yellow and lamp black. A nice rich dark green, okay? Yellow and black make fantastic earthy rich kind of greens. This will make a nice little base colour now. Let's have a look. Maybe a touch of phthalo blue. Tiniest little touch. Mix up a nice rich green. Let me just check. Okay, now what's going to happen is this is going to start mixing with the sky blue and become slightly lighter. So we just need to be a little careful. I'm putting in the background first now, alright? You see these bright green foliages at the front. I'm not looking at those as I look at the photograph, I'm looking what's behind them. So a simple block of dark green going up like this, look. And just fill that in. I won't worry too much about the rich bright green ones in the front just yet. Now I'm going a little bit darker and a little bit stronger with this. Because you can see it's very dark, it's almost a black down at the bottom, isn't it? So I'm going to go with lots of phthalo blue, lots of black. And this will be a nice little base for me to work on, to get my brights on top of. So the trick with oil painting for me like this is I always focus on putting in the darker colours first and then putting my lights at the end, especially with trees. When I'm painting trees. Now I'm going to stop at that. I'm then going to go back to my flat brush that I used earlier for the distant ones. I'm just going to go like this. Because as your brush loosens out when you're doing this, it will start creating a bit more natural. So when you start out it's very kind of sharp and pointy, but as it opens up it becomes a bit more natural then, you see. So just remember kind of up and down movements, random, very random. And we have a nice tree line up there, don't we? That's quite nice. So the next thing I'm going to do is mix a very dark colour and start putting in some really dark colours with this brush. I'm taking lots of phthalo blue, lots of black and a little cadmium yellow. It's almost black, but there's a bluey black in here, okay? I'm going to just start here and start darkening. And I'm simply going very random then with my brush. Just dab, 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 dab. I want to just get some nice dark spots in here because you must remember when painting trees and stuff like this, the darks will really show the lights in the end, because at the end of the day a painting is just lots of darks and lots of lights. So the lights will complement the darks and the darks will complement the lights. That's what I find. So make sure your darks are really nice and dark, because if they're not, it's going to be very difficult later to darken them. If you have the trees just where you want them and they're just nice, if you find then your darks are not dark enough, you find yourself almost having to paint over the entire area again to get what you want. Does that make sense? So don't be shy with your darks. at the beginning. Put nice strong black darks in there. You can see we have some really nice darks. Maybe even take some phaylo blue on its own. That will also bring out a shadow. If you're painting a shadow, plenty of rich blue will always bring the shadow out a bit more. Okay, I'm happy enough with that. Now I'm just going to kind of flatten this off at the end so I know where I am. Okay. I'm going to let that sit for a while, and the next thing I'm going to do is put my reflections in. So let me just have a look here now. I'm going to mix that dark colour, some phaylo blue, some yellow, and with that dark green, look, I'm going to pull down from my reflections, or from my trees. From that line of the trees, I'm going to pull it down straight, top to bottom, or bottom to top, whatever you like. A bit more yellow, make it a bit more on the green side if you want. Now, just simply pull it down like this, look. You can use a wide flat brush for this as well if you like. It's all the same. It's all the same thing. And follow the direction and the shape of what you're reflecting. So if my tree line is going up at that direction, my reflection will go back at that direction. It's just a mirror image, really. That's all you're doing. Then I'll take a nice darker colour, again some blue and some black, just where the darks are. Pull it down like that, look. So wherever you have darks, you put in a dark. Wherever you have lights, you put in a light. Now I know I'm going to be putting a bright kind of a yellowy greeny tree just here. So what I can do while I'm at this, I can take some cadmium yellow neat on my brush. Okay, bit of green there, but that doesn't matter. I know I'm putting a bright yellow tree here, so I will just pull a little bit of cadmium yellow greeny colour down like this. Alright, now we haven't even used Naples yellow yet. Let's try a bit of Naples yellow as well. And I might add a little couple of highlights here and there as well on that side. Maybe one or two through here and there. So I'm already kind of setting myself up for where I'm going to put the tree. So I now know I'm going to have to put a nice bright tree just in the centre there somewhere. But I already have my reflection done for that, so that saves me a bit of hassle, you see. It saves me a bit of work later on. So for instance, if I take some burnt sienna with cadmium yellow, I could just warm it slightly, knowing that I'm going to be putting one in there later. Maybe a little bit there, a little bit there. Just stagger them around, here and there. Now that's fine. I'll stop at that, take my soft brush and pull very gently down into the water. Always down like this first. Okay, that gives you a nice impression of a reflection, and then across very gently. That just softens them out. So that's my first step of my reflection done. The next step of my reflection will be carrying this water in. You see the way that kind of follows in. So I'll take my smaller brush, make sure it's nice and clean. A nice small little flat-edged brush. I'm going to take some light blue. Not very light blue, but a nice rich kind of a blue. And I'll just start putting this in here and there, look. I'm just kind of flicking. So my aim, what you should be trying to do here is kind of bringing the reflection into the light and bringing the light into the reflection as well, you see. So you're kind of merging the two of them together. So I'm picking up some green here and I'm coming over here and I'm putting it in here. So that gives you a nice rippled effect going through, doesn't it? You see, just very, very, very lightly. Now you don't have to go crazy with this because I don't want to lose my reflection too much. Not too much. I do want to keep my colours in the reflection just right. Now I'm going to grab a smaller brush for a change. We'll get a small pointy brush. Maybe just get some finer little details in here. So with a small brush, just put a couple of little ripples throughout here and there. You get a couple up on where the water meets the trees. Just separate that as well, look. And you can also use a palette knife for this if you like. A palette knife, just like what we did up there. You can do that if you like as well. Now I'm going to just take some of this bright whitey blue that we have mixed up here. I'm going to just start adding a couple of slightly lighter ones here and there. Down here as well. Look, just for the impression of catching some light. Just lose some of that. Remember, this is just an impression. I'm just trying to recreate the impression of the scene, all right? Again, I'm not painting a photograph. And I might also, with my little flat brush, take some of that bright yellow and just maybe lighten here and there. Just dragging some of that bright yellow through where I think it's going to be. You see what I mean? Just a little. Now I know this looks very dark on camera, because dark colours on camera can look very blacky, but they're not. It's rich kind of a greeny colour I'm putting on here. Now I will try and rectify the camera issue as soon as possible, because it's not the best quality camera in the world. Let me just see if I can adjust my exposure a little bit. Right, I'm just going to soften very gently. And I'll put in this bright tree we have up here. I think I'll try a fan brush, my friends. What do you think? Should we just go for it? Should we just try a fan brush? Let's take a dry fan brush. Lots of cadmium yellow, a little touch of the burnt sienna. Load up the fan brush and let's see if we can have a bit of fun with this. I'm just popping some of this colour with my tip of my fan brush here and there, look, just to create the impression of a nice bright tree. I'll take some Naples yellow as well. We get some even brighter colours. So I'm just being very random, really. Now I need to slightly darken one side of that. And also maybe over here, just add a little bit of light. My idea about doing this is to try and soften this tree kind of slightly back into the background a little bit. Okay, just to create an impression of a lighter tree just there. Now, I'm going to take some cadmium yellow and also just pull some cadmium yellow through here. So there's lots of different ways you can paint trees. You could use a fan brush. You could also use a palette knife, which I think I might try. Should we try a little palette knife? See if we can create some rich texture on that tree. But that tree will really catch your eye later on. Let's take some of this rich yellow with a little bit of burnt sienna, and we could just go like this, look. just adding with the palette knife. Just putting little nice, rich, bright blobs of colour. It's just about having fun, really, for me. It's about trying different things. Just having a bit of fun. There we go. So, we have this much done already. I'm going to call this part 1 finished. And in part 2 we'll come back and take our time painting a nice boat, maybe towing something. How about that? Because the boat will take a little bit of practice. But yeah, I think we're going quite well so far. I'll be right back, my friends, with part 2. Do not go anywhere.